let me just shift gears right now and say privacy has been mostly a paper exercise. It's been perceived as legislation that has no teeth. In Canada, organizations have basically said, well, yeah, we might accidentally detect things, but if we don't tell anyone, then does that mean we are not accountable, or will we be okay if we sweep these things under the rug? So by and large, that may or may not have worked over the past couple of decades. So what I'd like to do is go around and see what is working in Canada, what companies are doing things right, what organizations are doing things so right that it's improving their credibility, and what can organizations do to get to the point where they are verifiably compliant, and that will benefit various operational aspects of their organization and their supply chain as well. Vance, what do you think?
This is always a tricky one for me because, again, just being employed by who I am, I can't really can't really highlight who's doing things well.
Oh, we don't need you to name names.
Well, healthcare does. Healthcare does in Ontario.
No comment. So, but I guess what I'll say, you know, when we're talking about current state and kind of who's doing what, I think, you know, the important thing I think we're seeing. So, I'm gonna frame this slightly differently, just because, you know, obviously as a regulator, we see a biased sample of practices. So, you know, what tends to come to our attention are when things hit the media, which is generally not good practices, as well as, you know, if complaints have been filed, again, not necessarily good practices. So we tend to be seeing more of the bad practice than the actual good practice going of what's happening. That said, what I think, you know, what's encouraging right now is, I think there is a lot more recognition from organizations of first the importance of privacy. So I do think we're shifting towards people not wanting to shift or to push things under the rug. Again, as Derek's saying, after Cambridge Analytica, we're starting to realize that people care. I mean, again, Facebook has lost billions of dollars because of, you know, potential changes that Apple's making as far as privacy goes. So, you know, there are financial impacts to doing things poorly or doing things that in ways that aren't expected. And, you know, that's kind of leading to the nice thing of organizations that when they're engaging with regulators, they tend not to be asking for the basics anymore. So it's just it's nice that we've I mean, it's been 20 years, but it's nice that when people are doing, you know, coming to us, asking questions, asking for consultations, it's not, you know, we've never heard of privacy before, please help us. It's more kind of like, you know, we've gone through all your decisions, we've gone through the guidance that's been put out there. You haven't made a decision yet on this new type of technology, and we can't quite figure out how the law works. So, you know, I think that's you know, as far as I'm concerned, the good practice that I want to see even right now is the fact that, you know, people are doing their homework and then coming out and asking those kind of more nuanced questions. It's not just about, you know, what are the 10 principles anymore. It's okay, I don't get this, which, you know, it's actually very encouraging for as a regulator to be getting those questions, because it means people are thinking about it. It means you know, you're taking obligations seriously, and, you know, it's just not necessarily clear what has to happen. So yeah, that's a long and winding answer to kind of saying people are asking questions. People are starting to ask the right questions, which I guess is, you know, where I think we're at currently.
Well, I think that's a good thing.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I think from perusing Derek's newsfeed, for example, and he's always sharing interesting tidbits on LinkedIn. Derek, um, what do you see from the private sector perspective, either at either level? Do you see certain practices that can really benefit organizations to bridge the gap between just barely complying to benefiting their organization? So I'm obviously speaking to you because you've got the marketer's hat from an advertising background, etc. Do you still see that some organizations in Canada are starting to get the idea that their business can grow as a result of doing the right thing and demonstrating respect for personal information?
I think it's a great question, because I think that Castle really, we're what now, 2014, so we're 7-8 years out enforcing Castle. You know, you can have a comment on how well it's been enforced, but the fact is it's been the law. And the companies who reacted in the first 3 years actually saw better results from their marketing. They stopped kidding themselves. And the biggest thing for me is the hard stance Castle took on consent in order to send email. And it kind of marries with the hard stance that Quebec has taken on Bill 64, where consent's required. The fact is, though, we don't have the processes in place to actually keep track and record all of these consents. You know, we've partnered with a group in the UK that have a brilliant preference management center that your consumers can just go in and tell you what's okay with them. And then that plugs into everywhere you're using data in your system, and it just operates in the background, and you can always prove consent. I don't know how companies are going to prove consent, because I actually think if I walked into 98% of the companies in Canada and said, give me, show me your consent for these 20 people, I'll bet very few of them could actually prove consent. And
Right.
I think that's got to be one of the biggest deals going forward, is your ability to the ROPA, the records of processing activity, that are going to be required to prove that you're doing what the law is asking you to do. Now, keep in mind, the law is the low bar.
Yeah,
Really, what we
it's
should
a
be
baseline requirement.
yeah, what we should be looking at is would this be okay with our customer?
Yeah.
Like,
And that brings up an excellent point. I wanted to go to Constantine. Constantine, it's 2022. Do a lot of Canadian companies still have a false sense of privacy?
I think they do. I think that it's changing because the rest of the world is educating us. Like you mentioned, you know, or I think, can't remember who mentioned it, that, you know, fines haven't been a significant driver. Not being able to get revenue, not being able to close contract is a driver that management understands. And so increasingly there's two factors. Cambridge Analytica, but along with GDPR, really altered consumer expectations around privacy. We, as privacy professionals, couldn't have successfully spammed the planet as effectively as every company did in 2018 when they said, can we have your consent to continue writing to you? And everybody went, privacy? What's that? And then all of a sudden—
That's how they understood GDPR. Yeah.
Well, they understood something. And one of the consequences I know from talking with privacy officers in Canada is that access requests started going up. Because we always had those rights, but now people have been educated about it in a way. I mean, there have been negative things that have happened that reinforced it, but also that there was this mass education by spam, ironically, for us, that took place. The other side is that businesses in Europe and in the United States are presenting demands via contract through data protection addenda saying, you must do these things. And suddenly, you know, again, you know, the threat of fines has never been a motivator for, it seems, management to get, you know, to resource that poor general counsel or, you know, privacy officer within the organization. But now suddenly when they go, oh, we can't actually do this, and they want audits, they want assessments. And now suddenly we actually, to the point I think everyone is making, you actually have to prove you're doing what you say you're doing. And therein lies the rub, right?
Evidence.
The Canadians have not, implemented the right systems in general to be able to be, ironically, the accountability part is demonstrability, right? You need to be able to prove you're doing what you say you're doing.
Yes,
Excellent.
love it.
Amalia, your thoughts?
Well, I think I want to pick up on what Derek said and what Constantine said.
ROPA?
We're going back to accountability. So it's no longer about, I mean, the manual was written 10 years ago. Well, there's a lot of interesting things that Vance pointed out, and it didn't occur to me, but we as Canadians, when we speak to our customers, we actually use the highest law bar possible, even in terminology. We talk about controllers and processors. So we're basically educating the public and the companies that this is their role. It doesn't matter that the law hasn't been updated in some time, or no, these are the requirements now today in 2022. I think we also have to keep in mind that a lot of companies are new. There's, for me, this is something I have to keep reminding myself. There are new companies that are just setting up. They're very ambitious. They want to go from small business to medium size very fast. They're so focused on business, but they've never heard about privacy requirements. So I think the more we educate, the more we share best practices, the more we say it, that is going to help the Canadian market to realize this is not just like a trend into 2022. This is something we actually have to get on that train and start learning the terminology, start learning what it means to have a privacy management program, learn what it means to recognize a breach, declare a breach, and put a process around it. Learn to do a PIA and learn to follow the data to see where it flows out of Quebec or whatever province and what safeguards are on them. This is going to be terminology that is going to become de facto.